Habits are the efficient default mode of response, and they're largely responsible for a good, happy existence or a pretty shitty, miserable loop that we get stuck in, that we get stuck in, that we get stuck in, that we get stuck in. Welcome back. My name is Nick Quinton, FitLeanDad.com. You can sign up for my Supercharged challenge and get energized. Okay, so this is a kind of a laid bare episode where I kind of going to slow things down a little bit and kind of just ask you to do some critical thinking around kind of where you are, and I'm going to kind of share where I am with habits and behaviors and my thinking on this. Now, obviously, most of you guys, think of me as a kind of fitness guy or coaching perspective, but I get so many questions about habits, and everyone that comes in to work with me wants to know more about habits and how they can fundamentally shift their habits and change their lives. And it's at the core of everything that we do. So I wanted to make this piece of content to kind of sort of open the gap to that, trying to open the door on that. And I'm not sure I'm necessarily going to get all the way down the road of providing, 100% solution for every single person out there. Pretty much impossible. But let's shine the light on it and let's bring some attention. Hopefully you can provide some feedback and we can continue the conversation. And, that's largely what I want from this sharing experience is obviously to document my journey, help me to kind of work out what's going on in my head and understand if it's making sense and I can articulate it, and also create a loop where you can input and we can kind of share a conversation and try to kind of suss this stuff out. So habits. The quote I gave you was from a paper written 2016, Psychology of Habit, the annual review of psychology. So pretty prestigious kind of scientific journal. And I kind of go through the abstract and then kind of share my thoughts and kind of link it back into some of the bits that are going on in my mind and some of the bits that are shared with me through different aspects of coaching and different aspects of health and fitness. So habits are the efficient default mode of response. What does that mean? It goes on to say, as proverbial creatures of habit, people tend to repeat the same behaviors in recurring contexts. This review characterizes habits in terms of their cognitive, motivational, and neurobiological properties. I think that's quite interesting, the different components to it. And that opens a door to a whole raft of different kind of rabbit holes, really. But my take on that is really understanding that we are driven by emotion. We make decisions based on emotion. We think, keyword think, that we're logical creatures using this prefrontal cortex, this gorgeous part of the brain that can create everything that we see around us and take in the beauty of the world. However, that's not how decision making works. And all decision making is emotionally driven, whether you think so or not. It might seem amazingly logical. That's because it fits into the emotional box first, and then you're able to apply logic. And statistics are kind of always misleading and changing. So, 90, 91%, 80, whatever it might be, the biggest proportion of your cognitive function is done by the subconscious mind, what's literalized as the elephant. And you're just a rider on top of that elephant. And that's not my analogy, but that's a really, really powerful analogy that I've learned about recently. That the elephant is the thing that's actually going to change the direction of and move you forward. And that's not what you're in control of. You're in control of the rider on top. And only for 9, 8, 7, 6%, whatever you want to look at, of the time, are you able to pull on those reins and have an impact towards the direction of travel of your life, of your decisions, of your behaviors? Yeah, so that's kind of the first point, really. So, and the paper goes on to talk to identifying 3 ways that habits interface with deliberate goal pursuit. First, habits form as people pursue goals by repeating the same responses in a given context. Now, the confusing thing there for me is this notion of goals, which suggests that something we've selected, something that we've chosen, something that we want to move towards. And I just don't think that that's the case for most of us. I think we are pre-programmed, and we have these aspirational kind of in the front of our mind. And there's a turn of phrase that is alludes to this kind of small controlling part that doesn't necessarily have lots of control. We have these goals, aspirations, but we're unable to move towards them because our habits pull us in a different direction. So, and I think that's largely programming, that's largely conditioning, and I think the research would back that up as well. Um, but yeah, repeating the same responses is, just greases the groove, creates the motorway in terms of your decision making that forms the habit, forms the behaviors, and whether that be positive or negative, um, for sure. And that releases then the chemicals in your brain that give you the response that you're after, and that's the loop that we keep going round and round and round in, whether it's promoting something that we think is good or something that measurably is detracting from our life. Outlined as computational models, habits and deliberate goal pursuit guide action synergistically, although habits are efficient default modes of response. People tend to infer from the frequency of habit performance that the habit must be intended. But I think the paper then goes on to kind of refute that point, really, because we see that, and and that's, I guess, what I'm trying to achieve by looking at this is right, how does that reflect on our lives? How does that actually interpret? And statistics are kind of in fly in the face of this notion that we're pursuing something actively, and largely most people aren't. We're moving in a different direction. We're moving in the opposite direction. And whether we look at kind of obesity in the modern world or cardiovascular health in the modern world, I know these things are all linked. Or mental health, these things are all on the increase, which would suggest that we're not it's not an intended path. We're not the frequency of the habit is not moving us towards an intended goal as an individual. Come on to the kind of the group component, but that's something to think about. We conclude by applying insight from habit research to understand stress and addiction, as well as the design of effective interventions to change health and consumer behaviors. So how we want to break this down is into kind of another three kind of categories. And as you know, if you've watched any of my stuff, I try to break everything down into threes because I think that's how the brain works really well. Ones and twos are good as well, but three, no more than. And the kind of questions that I think drive interesting conversation around habits and behaviors is what we seek meaning from. What needs are you trying to satisfy, and what meaning are we attaching to this action, this habit, this behavior? And let's go through those. So we seek meaning for lots of different reasons, and when we're not doing something, we're still seeking a meaning through not taking action towards something. So let's put it in the context of fitness. Funnily enough, the training session that you didn't do, the gym session you didn't do, the run that you didn't go on, you will rationalize that. You will seek meaning from not doing that action and putting it into a little box that is therefore acceptable to a certain extent. To a certain extent, it'll provide a kind of a positive feedback saying, "Oh, I can rest today. I don't need to worry about that." And then there's that detracting negative component that will feed into your own neurosis about, and your own kind of inward reflection around how you're not meeting up to your own standards. What needs are you satisfying by either taking that action or not taking that action? Again, there's meaning, and you're satisfying some sort of urge by doing that. And that's why we know when we're well rested, we've got good nutritional things in our bodies, we're hydrated, we're not trying to satisfy an immediate need. Therefore, we're able to take a more long-term approach and satisfy something that we know is going to progress us. And that's kind of how we can flip around this notion of kind of the elephant and the rider. If the elephant is kind of well nourished and fed and rested, then the rider on top, this part of our brain, is going to be able to pull up the reins and have a good impact on the direction of travel. Okay, if that elephant is hungry, yep, or agitated because it's not been rested, or all the things that we know are positive influences on how we approach life and show up in the world, then it's going to be very difficult for us, our thinking brain, to actually implement and impact what's going on. The third part is what meaning we're attaching to our actions is I think probably the most powerful component. So everything that we do, we think it's because it's the right thing to do. And usually it's based on a belief, based on something that isn't actually true. It's something that's just become a repeated thing that we've programmed into ourselves, and we attach meaning to that. So, you a dog dying is an event that happens. Us getting very upset and sad about a dog dying is because we've associated so much meaning to that event and so much meaning to that relationship. And that's the case for everything. It's kind of, and I think that helps to unpick what's going on if we think about it in that lens of right, okay, what meaning am I attaching to this event? Why is it negative to me? Why is it positive to me? Why, and that's that feeds into this kind of the Buddhist third way about being kind of very very middle of the road about everything that's happening to you, good or bad. So the only way to kind of unravel the negative habits, because I think that's kind of the spin that we always think about. I want to get rid of these habits and I want to build these good habits, is to stop doing the things that trigger the emotional response. And kind of, we're now at the action stage. I want to leave you with something impactful, and also open the door. So please come back to me if this doesn't land or something's not really working for you or doesn't make sense. But so the way I've posed it here for you is the only way to unravel this is to stop doing the thing that triggers the emotional response, the thing that allows you to not be able to control the elephant. And therefore, you're able to move in a direction that is meaningful and logical, and towards this dream or desire, whatever that might be for you. And build a principle, a discipline moving forward. And I've gone into detail, and I'm sure I will again, about around this notion of discipline and what it means. So we talk about discipline as a strictness, a kind of rigidity, a kind of authoritarian thing. But I think that's if you look at the etiology of the word, it's not where it's come from. So discipline is something that you build, something that you embody, something that you structure your life around. So building a discipline of health, a discipline of fitness. We need to think very carefully about how we're using that word. And to add to that thread, lots of people come to me with challenges around what they frame as a problem with a process, a strategy, a tactic that they're looking for. But given what we've just been talking about, that's not usually the biggest barrier. Whether I'm working with a group of leaders within an organization, or individuals, or people on their fitness journey, it's always the human factors that hold us back. And we undoubtedly know what actions to take next. And we might not know the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 actions. We might need support in those factors, but usually the next action we need to take, we're kind of aware of if we do some deep digging. The biggest barriers are kind of these ruts that we get ourselves in, these psychological loops that we get ourselves into. So how do we get out of it? 3 things. I haven't got a nice acronym for you. It's OOA, something like that. First one is objectivity. So fundamentally, we need to kind of understand what's going on and clear the lens really and get some clarity. So trying to be objective, do some first principles thinking, challenge your beliefs, and move away from any isms and dogmas that you might have. And if you're not aware of what first principles thinking is, well, that's probably out of scope for this chat. But we really understanding what's true, what's meaningful at a very a basic level, a base level, so you're able to progress forward in your life. And Ray Dalio talks about these in his book, Principles. And it's really having a fundamental bedrock that you're aware of and understanding of, and you can revert back to and apply mental models to. So it's really about kind of, again, getting out of your head, being structured in your approach. So number one is objectivity. Do some first principles thinking. Challenge your beliefs, because beliefs are just patterns repeated. They're just habits, usually just programming. And if anything's got an ism or a dogma attached to it, be very, very wary, because that's going to lead you down a path that's going to remove objectivity. Number two, get out of your head, get around people who challenge your thinking and challenge your attitude. Again, that's really difficult to do. And I think culture at the moment is moving the opposite direction. We surround ourselves via social media with lots of mirrors, and we just bounce around the same notion, same chat all the time, and kind of get a little dopamine release on that, and just getting caught in a very, very similar loop. We need to start taking the opposite view and really challenge our own thinking. Number three, action fixes everything. And I've said it lots and lots of times. Taking action is kind of the panacea of helping you to move forward in all these things. And yeah, taking that next action and stop overthinking, I think, is probably what I would like to leave you with, and kind of get you guys thinking about the habits and beliefs and structures that you've got in your life, and how we can kind of share ideas to really unpick what's going on, and start to remove the legs from these tables of belief that just don't support us and don't make a lot of sense if we do some deep first principles thinking. I've enjoyed this one. It's challenged me to kind of put it all together and articulate it. Hopefully it's made sense to you. I'd love you to comment. If you're on the YouTube, hit subscribe and the like. If you're on the podcast, then thank you very much. I would very much value a review on whichever platform that you digest this information from. Take it easy and get supercharged. Forgot to say that one. Mama.